The prototype made one mistake in Chapter 5, just one, and he has no idea he made it. That mistake's name is Chum Chompkins. In Chapter 5, Chum looks like a side character. 2 short scenes, then gone. But what happened in those 2 scenes, and the task the prototype just handed him before leaving, will determine all of Chapter 6. Today, I'm going to explain why. Before the analysis, one thing needs to be clear. Chum isn't a loyal experiment of the prototype. In Chapter 5, he secretly works for Giblet, feeding information about the prototype's plans to the Resistance. The prototype has absolutely no idea. Chum is standing inside enemy territory serving both sides. That's a double agent, and that's the mistake the prototype made by trusting him. But before I say Chum is Chapter 6's silent hero, look at one thing. 10 days after the Hour of Joy, Chum hunted down Preston Willard, an employee resisting the prototype, and delivered him directly. No evidence of coercion, no sign he was threatened at that point, he just did it. And here's the question I can't definitively answer. Chum secretly works for Giblet, but since when? Before capturing Preston or after? If after, but then he was once genuinely loyal to the prototype. And if he was loyal once, is his switch of allegiance truly complete? Maybe Chum is deceiving the prototype. Maybe Chum is deceiving Giblet. Maybe both. The game doesn't answer this, and that's exactly why Chapter 6 will be impossible to predict. And this is what makes Chum's position extremely dangerous in both directions. The prototype trusts Chum enough to reveal his plans directly. If Chum is with Giblet, that's invaluable intelligence. If Chum is with the prototype, that's a trap being laid. And the prototype just told Chum, who is actively spying for the other side, 2 things: the status of the security system and that his next target is Poppy. The prototype trusted Chum enough to say these things. That is the biggest mistake he will ever make. But, and this is something I can't explain, if Chum genuinely wants to help the Resistance, why did he refuse to take the player into Reanimation in Chapter 5? That was a perfect opportunity, Giblet asked. Chum said no. No explanation, just shook his head, and notice his expression. Not fear, not hesitation. This is the decisive action of someone who knows exactly why. A spy who truly wants to destroy the prototype. Why refuse at exactly that moment? The only answer that makes sense. Chum knows something about reanimation that would make it more dangerous for the player, not safer. He didn't refuse out of cowardice. He refused because he knows something the game hasn't told us yet, and in Chapter 6, that something will be revealed. Giblet is outside. The player is outside, but Chum is still inside, knowing exactly what the prototype plans to do next, knowing the security system's location and status. When Giblet and the player return in Chapter 6, Chum is the only one who can tell them what to do before the prototype can react. If Chum is truly with Giblet, he just received something nobody in the Resistance has: full access to the entire security system. The prototype ordered him to repair it, but Chum could use that access to do the exact opposite, opening the doors the prototype is using to imprison Poppy, disabling the factory control systems, giving Giblet and the player the security layout before they return. All while appearing to follow orders. No other character can do this because no one else is trusted enough by the prototype to be given that task. If this scenario is right, the prototype made a fatal mistake trusting Chum, and Chapter 6 will be the story of what that trust costs him. But read that scene the other way. If Chum is still loyal to the prototype, then everything he did in Chapter 5 was a performance, helping the player escape the prototype, so the prototype knows exactly where the player is, refusing to take the player into reanimation so the prototype doesn't lose control of that area. And if Giblet trusts Chum, believes he's dismantling security from within, then Giblet will lead the player into the factory through exactly the path Chum has reported to the prototype. Chum isn't helping Giblet break the trap. Chum is setting the trap, and Giblet is walking in. Look at Chum's final scene one more time. He pats the player on the head, holds their gaze, then leaves. I used to read this as goodbye, but if Chum is still loyal to the prototype, this is the last time he looks at the player before the trap closes. Same character, same actions, two completely different meanings, and the game hasn't given us enough evidence to know which one is real. And here's the detail I haven't seen anyone connect deeply enough. In the Chapter 5 ARG, there's a tape called restricted_condemnation_1995, recording Chum tracking down an employee named Preston Willard. Preston had secretly conspired against the prototype alongside a group of other employees. Chum swallowed him, then delivered him directly to the prototype. This was when Chum was still loyal to the prototype. And in the final Chapter 5 tape called Salvation, the prototype transforms Preston into a brand new experiment. Not killed, not imprisoned, turned into an experiment. Which experiment number the game hasn't said. What he looks like the game hasn't shown. That's why this is one of the biggest open questions going into Chapter 6. And Preston is now a new experiment, transformed by the prototype himself after Chum captured him. He has more reason to hate the prototype than anyone in the factory, and the only one who can reach him without raising suspicion is Chum. And the only one who knows Preston is now a new experiment, the only one who can reach him inside the factory without suspicion is Chum. He captured Preston. He knows where Preston is. And if Chum decides to turn Preston from prisoner to ally, the prototype won't know what hit him. Same scene. Read it as option A. This is a goodbye from someone about to risk everything to destroy the prototype from within. Read it as option B. This is the last look from someone who set a trap watching the prey walk in. The question I'm leaving: which way do you read that scene? Comment A if you think Chum is dismantling the prototype from within. Comment B if you think Chum is still playing both sides. And when Chapter 6 drops, I'll post a verdict immediately. No deletes, no edits.